Hello everyone, welcome to the very first video of my YouTube channel. I am Paul. I am currently a software developer, and today I want to talk about why I like OutSystems as a low-coding platform. And first of all, well, if you don't know what OutSystems is a low-coding platform that allows you to make software without, well, I'm not going to say without any sort of code, but with as minimal code as you can. So anytime when you're mentioning a low coding platform in front of a software developer, you're always going to get one reaction, which is yuck, right? And because as a software developer, you're supposed to know a lot of coding, so you're supposed to code a lot. But that's not necessarily true, right? And because the reason I'm saying that is the whole purpose of being a software developer is that you are supposed to, write a set of instructions that can solve a problem. The end goal is to be able to solve problems through, coding. It doesn't matter how many lines of code you write. The ultimate goal is to take a set of inputs and turn it into a set of outputs, ultimately solving a problem. And this is where I think that your end goal should be focused on solving problems. And the reason I like OutSystems coding platform is that you are able to write code or solve problems really fast. And we're going to take a look at that in a minute. But that's kind of my take on it. Let me know what you think about a low-coding software platform being a software developer. Anyway, so let's jump into OutSystems. Okay, so what I'm going to do, basically, my plan is to make a CRUD software. It's very simple software, but we're going to try to see how fast we can do it with OutSystems. So I feel like it's going to be pretty fast, but of course there's going to be someone out there who's going to be faster writing code. But we'll just give it a shot, and you tell me how do you like OutSystems platform. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and create a new application. And the application that we're building today is we're going to try to build a budgeting app, or like a finance tracking apps, where you can enter transactions. Like you can I'm going to name it finance tracker. So the ultimate goal is to be able to add or edit transactions. You can add your incomes and your expenses, like when you're doing groceries or going to the restaurant. So let's go ahead and pick a color. I'm going to do a red color here. And let's go ahead and create this app. So I'm not going to do anything fancy because I'm going to try to keep this video short, but we're going to go ahead and create a React web app here. Like I was saying, I'm not going to create anything fancy. It's just going to be a CRUD app, so we're going to just have 4 basic functions. Okay, so here we are. We have everything set up for our app. I'm just going to go ahead and hit publish just to make sure everything's saved. So while it's publishing, let's go ahead and take a look at the database. So the first thing is that you have to create a database to store your tracking data. And now in a traditional app, this is where you'd write SQL to create your tables, but in OutSystems, we're going to create entities. So I'm going to name my entity transaction, which is essentially a table. And by default, OutSystems gives me the ID, and I'm going to go ahead and create a few more entity attribute. So I'm going to give, and these are essentially all the columns or fields, right? So I'm going to give item name, we're going to do a category, we're going to do a amount, and date. Okay. And I also want a type, which would be the transaction type, which is supposed to be an expense or an income. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and create a static entity, and this is where you would normally write Okay. I also want the transaction to have a, okay, 3, 2, 1. I also want this transaction to have a type, and where you'd have, oh, my bad, where you'd have whether this transaction is an expense or an income. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and create a static entity. Here in a traditional app, when you're coding, you'd probably use some sort of enum, but this is where it's a little bit powerful on the OutSystems end. We can just write one static entity with expense and income, and we'll be able to use this as a field. So you can do transaction type. You know what? I'm just going to do type. And so also I missed something. No, this is tough. Okay, so we can also set the category of the data type. Also, we can set the data type. So each fields Properties are stored here. You can change them. So you can do the name. I can change the name to 100. Length of text. Category should be more than 50. Oh, we'll do 100. Amount is currency, date is date, and then type is no longer text because we created a static entity. So the data type is actually transaction types. So it's a transaction type ID. I can put it a little bit higher. Okay. All right. So we have our tables completed. That's all it took. No SQL. Not that I don't like writing SQLs, but this is pretty fast, I'd say. Also, we can insert some dummy data here, which can be done pretty fast, pretty easily here. We're going to do an income. Okay, and that's all it took. So if I apply it, this is going to go into the system. So our database just now have one of, not the database, our table has one row with this data. I'm going to go ahead and create some more. Okay, so I have filled out some more. I added a mix of income and expenses. So let's go ahead and apply. All of them are saved to our table. Okay, now since we have our table, let's go ahead and create a screen or a page. So we're going to come back to interface where we define our screen, and under main flow, I'm going to go ahead and create a screen, and I'm going to name it transaction. So let's go ahead and create the screen. All right, so this is where we're going to go ahead and create, we're going to display all of our transactions. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and we have to fetch the data in our database, right? And this is where you'd write more SQL again, but in this case, we're going to fetch a data from the database, and we're going to try to find some transactions. And right now, so here you can add filters, sorting, and all sorts of SQL stuff. Of course, this is not it doesn't give you the full capabilities of SQL like subqueries and things like that. But still does a pretty good job. It's gonna take care of your most basic needs. All right, so we have that. So now let's go ahead and close that. So this will fetch the database. So and now what we can do is we want to display it on table. So now here on the left side is all our elements that we can use to style our page. So first of all, I'm gonna give it a title. So the name of the title is gonna be transactions. And just so you know what it looks like, let's go ahead and publish it, and I can show you what it looks like. All right, it's ready. We can go ahead and click on open browser, and I can pull this for you right here. So it's giving me, it's asking me to log in. So, and this is also one of the powerful things. OutSystems gives you a lot of pre-built things like this login and user module. But for this, to keep this simple, we're gonna go ahead and make this page visible to anybody. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, there you go. This is our page so far. All right, so let's go ahead and display our table now. So for that, we're gonna go ahead and drag a table element. And this is how easy it is. You can go ahead and drag your SQL or data and directly drop it into your table. And voila, everything is just automatically done for you. And of course, you can customize this. You can add more stuff to it if you want. Like, let's say I want another category field or something. I can do that easily, but I don't need that right now. So another cool thing is I can go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to show you another automation that OutSystems does for you. So if we go ahead and directly drag this into the page, it's going to automatically populate everything. And now you can also see it also gives us a pagination system automatically. And then you also see there is when there is no item in the table. It also kind of implements all the logic. It also implements some sorting logics, and you can see them over here. And we're gonna go into this in a minute. All right, so we can see our data now. So I'm gonna go ahead and publish this, and let's take a look. All right, it is ready. We're gonna go ahead and click on it. We can just refresh this page, and we'll be able to see our data. There you go. So the reading part is done. We can easily see what this is. All things are ready. Let's go ahead and implement the edit section now. So we don't need this one. So we're going to take this out, and I can implement a feature where we're going to add some custom CSS here. So I want this amount to be red when it's an expense, and I want this amount to be green when it's an income. So we can go ahead and create some CSS. So you can click on this button and write some class names. All right, I made these two classes. Now we go back here, and then here's the amount. So under here, when we click on this, there's going to be a style classes, and we can just give our classes here. So this is red, and you can see it's automatically showing you red, but I want an if statement here. So instead of class, we're going to go expression editor. So what we want to do, if it's an expense, it's going to be red, else it's going to be green. So the condition is what is the transaction type. So to know that, we can go to get transactions, which is our data. So this is treat this as a variable or an object which has a list property and the current property. So every time it's on list.current, it's gonna refer to that current row. So you can go to transactions. So in that case, so get transactions.list.current.transaction.type. So this, if this equals to, so our equals to our entities transaction type dot expense, then we make it a red. In OutSystems, you don't have to do two equals. It's by default. It'll see if this is a condition, and based on that, it's going to treat this as double equals or a conditional statement. And there you go. Once this is done, let's go ahead and test it. So now we can see that our incomes are green and then expenses are red. It's pretty neat. So there you go. We made the list without doing not a lot of HTML or CSS. Everything was pretty much done for us, and it also automatically implemented the sorting for us, which is pretty nice. If we had more items, it would automatically put paginations for us, which is also pretty handy. But let's go ahead and move to the next part, which is editing. All right, so to edit a record, I'm going to go ahead and create a new screen. Okay, I'm going to name this screen edit transaction. Okay, this screen is supposed to take a parameter, which is going to be which transaction we want to edit. So which is going to be transaction ID, and the type would be a transaction ID. Well, identifier is ID. All right, so when we have that, we can go ahead and fetch data from our database. Again, we find transaction, but this time we want to add a filter. We don't want all the transaction. We want a specific transaction, with the ID that was passed. So we can do that by, we're saying that this table's ID should match the given input transaction ID. Now we're going to get only one. This is where you can test your values. So which was the first one or the second one? Anyway, so go ahead and close this. So this is usually a query parameter to a screen, and we're going to see how that works in a minute. Okay, so now we're going to see if this is pulling the right data. Hit publish. All right, we're going to go ahead and open this. Okay, so it just took us back to the home screen, which was our first screen. But now let's go ahead and open this particular screen by right-clicking and hit opening in browser. And again, this is automatically set to registered user. We're going to change that to everyone. All right, we're done. Let's go ahead and open this again and close the previous tabs. Okay, and it's absolutely 0. And the reason that is because we did not pass any transaction IDs. So this is just null, which is nothing. So what we can do is, since we know it's a query parameter, we're going to do transaction ID here, and we're going to just do 1. All right, our data was successfully fetched. So now instead of this, we're going to go ahead and edit it. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and create a form. So let's go ahead and delete that, and we're going to drag a form. And again, if you just drag your data from here to here, it's going to automatically fetch it, or automatically make this form for you. We can resize this. I'm going to make it half of the screen, just so it looks nice. And there we go. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and implement the save method, or an action or a function. So to do that, we can right-click and create an action. In OutSystems, all the functions are called actions. And right now it's a client action because it's on the client side or the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and create the action, name it save transaction. All right, let's go back here. If we click on here, we can see it will give the option to on-click, and we can select our function. All right, it's ready. Let's go ahead and go to our browser and refresh this page. And there we go. Everything looks like it's working. It's gonna fill it up with existing data, and you can change things. Now you can see it's automatically implemented that dropdown for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement the save now. So first of all, to make this save action, we need to make a server function that's gonna actually save it to the database or update it to the database. So to do that, we're going to go ahead, go to the logic tab where we implement more functions, and here we have a server action. So now let's click on this and create a function called update transaction. Okay, so now if you go into the data or the database and open this up, the table, you're going to see these are the SQL statement or SQL function that OutSystems gives you to run, execute queries on the table. And we're going to use these functions in our server actions in order to interact with the table. So going back to our transaction update, this is going to take an input parameter, which is going to be a direct object of the transaction. So this is going to be an object of the whole transaction, which we're going to update. And here you can implement more logics here. For example, I can add a data validation. Let's say I don't want the amount to be negative. So we can do if, and in the condition, we want to say if the transaction's amount, so transaction.amount is less than 0. So if this condition is true, we're going to go ahead and raise an exception. The exception type would be, we can just do abort activity because we don't want to continue. Else, well, we have to set a exception message, which whenever this is raised, the message is going to be shown. All right. If, however, this is not true, we can go ahead and implement our server action or the database action, which if you scroll right here, it's going to, under transaction, we're going to do update transaction. And this actually wants a transaction type. So we're going to just go ahead and pass in the transaction that we got, the transaction object that we got as an input. Okay, so once it's done, I want to output a parameter called success, which I'm going to set it true or false based on how it went, and also a message along with that. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and assign the success to true, and we're going to assign a message. All right, but however, so now we have raised an exception here, but we did not handle it. So we can handle it right here. So we're going to create a exception handler for this exception. And when this exception happens, we're going to go ahead and set some things up here. So in this case, if the exception was made, it was not successful. So we're going to set the success variable to false. We can set the message variable to the message that we're going to receive from this exception, which is going to be passed from here. All right, so our action is done. Let's go ahead and publish to save it. So now we can use this function to implement our edit transaction. So we're going to go ahead and save. We're going to double click on that, which will take us to our client action save transaction. We don't have to do a lot. We're just going to go ahead and call this function. And now we're going to do another if. So we do if this transaction. So now we have this variable outputs, right? So if this was a successful function, we're going to go ahead and show a message. And the message is going to be whatever message we got back. The message type is going to be success. And if this was not successful, we're going to go ahead and show an error message, which is going to be the same message that we get from the function. Okay, so we're getting an error because we did not pass the transaction to this, which is going to be our getTransaction.list.currentTransaction, because we want to pass the whole transaction object. All right, this is implemented, so let's go ahead and publish it. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. So let's refresh this. So now what we want to do is, instead of this, I'm going to try a negative value and see if I get an error. And I did get an error. Let's go ahead and change this to 2000. And let's try to save this. It says saved. So let's go ahead and open up our transactions. And now you see it's 2000 instead of 2500. Okay, so that was pretty easy to update a record. So now let's go ahead and also connect this to that page. So to do that, we're going to go back to our transactions, and we're going to go ahead and on the name of that item, we're going to make this a link. And we're going to link it to the screen, and the ID of the transaction, which is going to be the input parameter for the screen, is whatever the current ID is. So get transaction.list their current transaction ID. Hit publish. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. And now you'll see that all of these turn into links, which we can click, and it'll automatically take us to that. So let's go ahead and try something else. Let's go ahead and take this movie. So instead of this movie, we're gonna say Demon Slayer, because that's what I just watched very recently. And we can just edit everything on the go now. Okay, so let's go back, and you'll see that movie is changed to Demon Slayer. So there you go. It's pretty easy to update now. So now let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is gonna be create. Okay, so to do that, we're gonna go ahead and create a button here. So let's find a button, let's drag it here. And here we're gonna say add transaction. And I'm gonna move a little bit faster now to speed it up. Okay, so for the on-click event, we're gonna go ahead and move to a screen. So in this case, there is no ID of the transaction. So OutSystems gives you something called null identifier, which is basically 0, which is not an identifier. And you can pass that to say there is no identifier. Go ahead and publish this. Okay, let's take a look at the change. Okay, we can click on add transaction. It's gonna go ahead and take us to here, and we can see everything is empty. Okay, so now the problem is our save function is actually just update function. It's not creating anything. So instead of doing a transaction update, we're gonna go ahead and create a transaction creator update. And basically, this is going to be the same thing as this. Instead of update transaction, we're going to use something separate. So let's go ahead and copy everything from here. I'll delete whatever is here and paste it here. So now, instead of this update transaction, we're going to go ahead and create a transaction. So let's go ahead and do another function, transaction. So we can do create, but we also want to do update because we want to take care of both of them on the same function. So we're going to do creator update. Again, it's going to ask for the same transaction, which we don't have access to because we never took anything. So again, we can copy this whole thing and paste it here. So taking a transaction input and outputting success and message, we can go ahead and put, oops, my bad, put this transaction here. All right, transaction goes in, and all of the other things will work just fine. Let's go ahead and publish this. So now let's go back to our edit transaction and go to this save action. So instead of transaction update, we're going to go ahead and use this new function that we created, which is transaction creator update. We have to change the whole everything here because this is referring to the old function. So I'm going to go ahead and update the rest of them. All right, we're going to go ahead and publish this, and we'll see if that works. All right, we are here. Let's go ahead and add a transaction. We're going to set it to an expense, and we're going to name it pizza, category restaurant. All right, this is saved. Going back here, our pizza is added. So yeah, there you go. It's pretty easy. I do want to change one more thing. So after a transaction is updated or created, we want to go back directly to the home screen. So we can just go to home screen. Okay, let's go ahead and test this out. Refresh this. So the pizza didn't cost $9.99, it actually cost $19.99. So let's save it, and it'll automatically go back to the home page. So now you can see, that creating, editing, updating, reading, those are pretty easy. I didn't go over how to delete it, but again, that's also going to be just one more server action and just one more button that connects to the server action. But it's pretty much pretty easy. And you can, if you look at the process, we kind of did the exact same thing as we would have done in a software development in a more coding environment. But you can see that it's pretty much the same process, but it was much faster because I didn't have to do a lot of work on the UI. I didn't have to do a lot of customization on styling and things like that. So I feel like this gives you this saves you a lot of time if you want something really quickly, fast, because everything is just ready on the get-go. The problem with OutSystems is that everything is a library. A lot of things are pre-built, so if you want to do some customization, you might face some limitations. But other than that, overall, I really like this platform. I feel like OutSystems is a great platform. Let me actually go back to my camera. Hello again. So yeah, that's why I really like OutSystems, because it's really fast. I can work really efficiently. Yeah, and I'm not really losing any problem solving skills or anything. It's just super fast and super efficient. So, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope maybe you learned a little bit about low coding if you haven't done it before. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button below and subscribe for more videos. I'm not promising I'm gonna make more low coding videos. I might, or I'll just go back to traditional coding and see how that goes. But anyway, thank you everyone. I will see you on the next video.